I believe that those that just want to jump right in without allowing us to understand them.
You need to know how to make sure that you're not followed home. You need to know how to make sure that they don't have anything that they could potentially use to hurt you.
There's also this greater addiction to it.
Like, I know that there are issues with a lot of people do go into debt with this.
Hello, welcome to Dommed Podcast. We are your hosts, Mistress Gemma
and Goddess Seraphina.
Are you ready to be dommed?
Hello, Seraphyna. With an I will make very clear, because here, of course, we all know our host, Seraphyna, goddesses Seraphina, one with an I, one with a Y. So pay attention closely, viewers and listeners. Thank you so much for being on Dommed Podcast, Seraphyna.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me.
We didn't know each other before we connected over this podcast, but Goddess Seraphina with a Y and I stumbled across your TikTok, your social media, and we were really intrigued by the way you spoke about FinDom and your approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like FinDom in particular can be a very hot and salacious topic. Especially as of recent, I feel like it really has grown and snowballed and is very prevalent online, especially. And so could you give our little minions, our dommed minions, some information about you?
I've been a online dom for, specifically dom, I think 3 years now. Playing with various kinks and avenues, but FinDom is one of them. I absolutely love what I do, and I'm excited to share more about it.
Yeah. How did you land? I know you just said that it's a part of what you do. But how did you get into financial domination? And, what's the thrill and allure of it for you? Why did you incorporate it into your practice?
So I think the first time I heard of it was either on Twitter or one of my subscribers on OnlyFans mentioned it to me. Like, those two things happened around about the same time. I remember whenever I first learned about it, I was kind of like, there's no way. There's no way. Like, I saw people's tweets on the TL and was like, there is no way in hell it is just, like, posting a tweet and there's no real, like, thing behind it. So I started asking more of my, like, subscribers who were very curious about it on my OnlyFans about it and what they enjoyed about it, what their experience was with it. It was something that I was interested in, but I didn't know much about and there weren't many resources on. So I asked the people who were inquiring about it, who had experience with it. On Twitter, especially, like, over the last few years, there are a lot of people who are just very, like, post a selfie, demand people send money. They don't have, like, any negotiations with things. There's a lot of misinformation around it, but it is a very deep psychological kink.
Yes.
It plays a lot into psychology and sociology, and I really enjoy that side of things. So yeah, there's a lot of negotiation there, a lot of safety protocol that you go through. Yeah, there's a lot to it. It's a lot of fun.
Yay. So there's a few things that I want to dissect there. First and foremost, talking about the lack of resources. Are there any resources that you found to be really helpful that our viewers could have access to? We can link it below as well.
As I say, a lot of the stuff that I learned as I was getting into it was from my subscribers and things that I found on the internet that I since cannot find specifically. But I did find a couple of things that do help with not just FinDom dynamics, but dissecting general dominance and submission dynamics, which apply very broadly to FinDom, and a couple of resources that are FinDom specific. So I have them written down because I have a brain like a sieve. But one of them is from gaybdsmfiction.com, and it's called What is Ethical FinDom? Financial Dominatrix interview with a woman called Kat, and it is on YouTube. And she's got some really interesting stuff to say about it too.
Do you remember anything that really stood out to you that your subscribers communicated about FinDoming that really attracted attracted them to it or excited them and made it alluring, made it wanting to be something that they are wanting to explore with you?
I mean, there are a lot of different ways that FinDom can look. So a lot of them had very different things that they really liked about it. Some of them just really like to spoil a beautiful woman. Some of them really do just think, I want her to live the most luxurious life and I want to see it unfold before me. And
Yeah.
I enjoy like a little bit the knowing that, hey, I did that. I did that. Some of them want to be like named on social media of like, hey, if you show this thing that I paid for, can you like name me or like drop my at or whatever it might be? And others are like, hey, can you keep it a little bit more secret? Like, I don't necessarily want people to know, but I really enjoy seeing you show it off. And there were other people who find a slightly more, I don't know how to describe it, but a more intense side of it alluring. I had a lot of people who were interested in specifically blackmail, which is something
Yes.
that I personally don't play with because it can be very,
Okay.
if nothing else, legally iffy for a dom. It can be very, like, no, completely disregarding the morality of that there. That's a whole separate discussion, but even just legally, that is very, like, shaky ground to be on. But a lot of them enjoy the transfer of power is the main thing. That
Yeah.
men are told in society that a lot of their value comes from being the breadwinner, being able to provide and things like that. And to them, it is a very alluring and erotic transfer of power to send that one defining factor of what they see as like a defining factor of their worth and value to a gorgeous woman.
When I got into the pro space, financial domination was something I felt a little uncomfortable with. And that's obviously my own relation to money. And I'm always constantly being faced with that. But when I had this understanding, it made a lot of sense where you said society puts a lot of value on men making money and
Yeah.
their self-worth. And in DS, it is a power exchange. And money
Yeah.
is power.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it's an energy exchange. And so them giving us their money is that energy exchange of dominance and submission. And the amount of energy they have to put in to work hard to earn that money is a transfer of that energy, just transformed and converted to literally a currency, a different currency.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like a lot of them have a big thing for being told, like, you're going to go out and you're going to work hard for your money and you're going to give it to me.
Yeah. And then it gives them a sense of accomplishment too. So you were saying that you don't do blackmail. How do you personally define your ethical boundaries around FinDom?
I would say that I would never personally feel comfortable overstepping something that could put somebody in a position where, even though I know I would never abuse it, I could have the tools to put them into destitution or financial, mental, emotional, like, danger. That's something that to me, I find the eroticism in that power exchange, absolutely, but by the time there is something that I feel like they could have a genuine fear of danger with me, that's a point at which I go, I don't feel comfortable with that. As a dom, that is something that I feel like I need to trust that my submissive is going to enforce their boundaries with me, and if I have the tools to overstep those, that feels kind of foregone.
Yeah, I think it's the thought of knowing you have that power is the thrill.
Yeah,
But then
absolutely.
whether you use it slash, in that case, abuse it is a different story. How does the negotiation part go?
Yeah, I
then?
was
So
gonna
you
ask
kind of
that.
know what those boundaries are. Because yes, like you said on Twitter, it's like people are just, well, X, whatever, Twitter. It's going to always be call me
Yeah,
old school,
me
I
too.
guess. People are just saying, pay me now. Like they're demanding
Yeah.
it, they're bullying. And
Yeah.
there's a lot more that goes behind it to be ethical. So what is that
Yeah.
process for you before you start engaging and actually?
Before anybody sends me any money beyond like an initial tribute, if they choose to do so, which oftentimes tributes are just to make sure that, they're not a time waster and that they are. A lot of the time, people set their tributes to make sure that somebody is within their price bracket kind of thing, like what they want from that kind of dynamic, that the submissive does have the facilities to fulfill that, that there is compatibility for play there.
Yes.
But Beyond that, I always make sure that somebody has sound mind to tell me what their budgets are and what their boundaries are. Maybe it's what they can and can't afford in a session, one time off, whatever, or maybe it's like a, hey, each month this is my income and I do not have more than this much to give each month. Um, and if someone does tell me their budget and then in a session tries to overstep it or sends beyond it, I've had one person before who sent me over what their budget was and was like, "Please, Goddess, I just need to send this money." And I was like, "You told me your budget when you were of sound mind. We went over it. Those were your boundaries. I cannot go over those boundaries." I ended up actually sending him the money back and
Oh.
saying, "That is not
Oh.
something that is
Mhm.
safe. I need to know that anybody that I am playing with is able to establish and assert their own boundaries, and maintain them." And I had to say to that particular person, I can't play with you anymore. Like,
Yes,
that's
Oh.
not,
I've done the
you're
same.
not safe to play
Yeah.
with. That's like not for me, but for yourself. Like, you need to
Yeah.
adhere to the things that you have in place for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
So,
had subs that have come to me that have shared I've gone into debt for FinDom and it's really been a problem. And they reached out to me, even though I don't necessarily specialize in FinDom and it's not something that's a majority of what I do, although I do love the thrill and enjoy it. Like it's something I would welcome more.
Mhm.
And they were saying, yeah, it actually became a problem. And they kind of were looking to me to help enforce some boundaries. And a couple of them I had to tell, hey, once you pay off that debt and you're cleared, then we could start engaging. Because as of now, going more negative is not sustainable. It's not
Yeah.
something that I'm comfortable, and I'm actually enforcing my boundaries of what I feel safe within or comfortable with.
yeah, I think a lot of people don't quite see how many, like, I know that there are issues with a lot of people do go into debt with this sort of play, and a lot of them have like an eroticism and an arousal through that. A lot of people have mentioned how they find pleasure in the fact that a woman could just put them into complete and utter financial ruin. But the thing is that I think
Mm.
someone who is safe to play with generally won't want to put somebody into financial ruin.
Yeah.
Like, if they want to do that, they're probably not someone you should be playing with.
Well, in the long run, like it's not going to be a long-term thing
No.
if
Yeah,
you're
it's
in
absolutely
financial
not
ruin and
sustainable.
destitution. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that financial domination has unique elements of control and vulnerability within the greater context of BDSM since you play across the spectrum?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, whenever I am engaging with fin subs, I notice the specific phrases that they enjoy that play on, as I said, the sociological thing of, oh, men's value lies in their income and their money. I would say, yeah, it's a lot of it is just very, you play on that particular vulnerability. Um, but in terms of how the vulnerabilities like manifest, it's very similar to other kinds of BDSM, I find, um, where you're finding something that someone likes to play around with that vulnerability, and you're within healthy boundaries, obviously, but you're f***ing with it a little bit. Sorry, can I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, you're
cool.
could totally
But
edit
yeah,
it too
Yeah.
with a cute little
fair enough. That's
Yeah.
fine.
if we need to.
We talk too much about how we like to mind people. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
it's fun.
is so
It's
fun.
nice to give some.
Yeah.
On occasion, as a treat.
As a
Yeah,
treat.
as a
If
treat.
you deserve it, then I might
Yeah.
give a.
A kind
Yeah.
reward.
Yeah.
Is there I know you said that you don't care for blackmail, but is there a sector of findoming that really excites you in particular?
The main part of FinDom that I participate in is people reimbursing me for things. But one
Oh.
of yeah, but one of my favorite parts is, honestly, I find drains very fun. Like, obviously you establish boundaries and things beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I find that it can be very fun because there's more continual interaction throughout a drain, and you do get to see them sort of participate actively in that power dynamic in more than just like one interaction or like four messages kind of thing. You get to see it over a period of maybe half an hour. So that I think is really fun. And I don't really do that a whole lot. I have a certain like select list of subs that I do that with, but I enjoy it when we do.
For our viewers, can you kind of explain a little bit more of what a drain is and little tidbits of, I know you said that there are certain phrases or certain verbiage that likes to be used. Can you give some examples of how that would play out between you and a
So,
FinDom?
so a drain is where a FinDom and a FinSub will have an interaction in which the FinSub has a allotted amount of money that they want to and are able to send to a FinDom, and the FinDom gets them to send it over to them, but there is a lot of power play involved in certain things that you say, and choosing different quantities of money that you want them to send each time they send, because within that budget you get them to send multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the time some of them enjoy more praise-based play, and some enjoy more degradation-based play. I find degradation-based play is more common in FinDom, but there are definitely some that just want to be told that, like, you're such a good little pay pig for me. Like, you're such a good human ATM. Like, you're doing so well. Like, I'm gonna spend all this money and have so much fun with it. And there are others who prefer more degradation. So maybe like, that's it. That's all you've got to give me. Send more. And you know that it's within their budget,
Yes,
but it's still like within that power play, role play dynamic.
totally.
And a lot of them like to be told that they're things like pathetic, because it's very much a thing of like all that they are in that moment. They, as we've discussed, they enjoy handing over that power, as in their money. Money is power. So you're like, you're pathetic. You know, all you are to me is a fucking human ATM. Like,
Yeah.
that's all you're worth.
Objectification,
Like
the
once,
dehumanizing.
yeah, like once you stop paying me, I'm not interested. And of course,
Yeah.
after a drain, there is aftercare and things like that. But in that moment, again, it's that role play and it's that thrill.
Yeah.
And they like that objectification, as you said. So
Yeah.
that can be a lot of fun to play with.
Yeah. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for giving those examples
Yeah.
because I do think that it really paints the picture, one, really well. And I think that when talking about something so taboo and that's usually in the shadows, you hear certain verbiage that is used within the community, but not specific examples of how the dynamic can play out and does play out. And again, your specification on the container. Thank you for talking about aftercare as well,
Yeah.
because if communicated and negotiated, we believe that it can be a place that's very necessary, especially after a space of degradation and humiliation.
Do you find that some subs just get so turned off by the negotiation phase?
Yeah, I've had a couple of people reach out before. Thankfully, I've not had anybody send like obscenely large numbers of money before like trying to engage with me in a drain, specifically before any negotiations. But I have had people send like maybe a tenner or something, like, hey, I wanna send more, and then they just send like small increments, and I'm like, okay, well, what's your budget? What do you want from this kind of play? What sort of play in FinDom do you enjoy? And they're just kind of like, no, I just want to get to it. I just want to send. And I'm like, that's not how that works. That isn't how a safe dynamic is fostered. And if that is how you have approached this, I cannot play with you.
You might have not reached it. You might not have face to face with it, but I'm pretty sure I could find something if I went down a list, because this happens all the time, especially with newbies, and I give them a bit of grace when they're like, I don't have any limits. It's like, well, you don't know what you don't know. So let me walk you through a bunch of stuff that I enjoy. And most people would not gravitate to naturally.
Yep.
And as I get to it, they're like, oh yeah, no. I don't think I'd be into that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
And you're like,
so
there it
yeah,
is.
so this is great. This is a great start.
Yeah.
Like, let's
Yeah.
go through that. And I believe that those that just want to jump right in without allowing us to understand them, there's also this greater addiction to it. I view FinDom in an unhealthy way, very much like gambling. You're going for that dopamine hit. It's so easy to just press a button and send that money, and especially to someone you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I believe many go into debt, because it is likened to gambling addiction.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in a Reddit group actually called PayPig Support Group that I
I was just
joined
about to
so
ask, I
that
was like, is there an AA group for
yeah.
addiction?
So a lot of people join that to whether it's get help for an addiction to FinDom play that they have, or to maybe someone who has recovered from it to help others who are trying to recover from it. And that was another resource that I used to see how people had been kind of lured into unhealthy dynamics with like unethical FinDoms and see what I could avoid and what behaviors to look out for.
How could someone who is curious about fin doming as a fin sub, what are some attributes and things they could look out for? I mean, we spoke about it. The dom should probably take an interest of like, what's your budget? Who are you? What are your limits?
Mm-hmm.
But what are some red flags if you're trying to search for fin dom that are red flags and green flags?
Some red flags I would say are things like, for example, I have a lot of what are known as poachers come into my TikTok comments that will reply to the comments in my comment section saying like, oh, you want a FinDom? DM me. And a lot of the time, first of all, they aren't even the person that you see on the profile, they're impersonations.
Yeah.
But second of all, they don't know the first thing about safe practice. That can be, and there's a whole industry somehow for catfish FinDoms, where people have a thing for sending to somebody who isn't the person in the photos that they're seeing,
Oh.
which confuses me. I haven't quite delved into that side a lot, but I've seen it because someone made a catfish account of me, and it was like catfish, not me in the photos, but they were still doing FinDom under my face, and I was like, this is a real head scratcher.
Seraphina, I was curious, when looking for subs, are you wanting a long-term engagement, or are you happy with the one-off exchange and session?
So I have a limited number of people that I do have like longer term interactions and dynamics with. But FinDom is, despite the fact that there is this sort of social idea that, oh, it's really easy, you just demand men send you money, which as we've been over just isn't true. It's a lot of time. Like, it is a lot of time to maintain a long-term dynamic with somebody in a FinDom, FinSub way. So I have a very short list of like consistent FinSubs, and other than that, I do have more like one-off type things. Where if somebody wants to cover something, fantastic. I will still have that conversation with them of like, hey, this is all within your budget, like this is all, you're all good for this, and go through everything with them. But I don't foster long-term connections with more than I have the like
Capacity.
the time and the capacity for. Yeah, I think it's just knowing your boundaries and your limits in your ability, which I find, on a slightly unrelated note, I'm polyamorous, and it's a very similar kind of like if you're polysaturated.
Yes.
It's if you're like fin subsaturated, I guess. But yeah, if you just don't have the time, don't try and foster a dynamic you can't maintain.
Yeah.
Is that specific to fin subs, or is that in general? Because obviously, again, a reminder to our viewers, it's only a portion of what you actually enjoy as a dom. So do you say that outside of the financial arena, it's easier to foster long-term relationships with subs?
I think
Because you're only digital, from my understanding, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I only work online, but I find I just tend to, not so much that one is easier than the other, but I focus more of my energy on creating longer term dynamics with people outside of FinSub, and in a more generalized like dom and sub dynamic in other kinks that I work with a lot. So things like chastity or cuckolding, things like that. So just because of where my kind of work has directed me, I tend to focus more on those dynamics with people and putting the energy towards those. But I wouldn't say one is easier or harder than the other. They are both maintaining a very intense power dynamic. But
Yeah. How do you make the transition of the chemistry between a Fin sub where you are actually thought that it was going to be a one-off thing and then realize that there's chemistry there and that you would potentially want to explore a longer term dynamic with them if you're in that capacity? How do you identify the special ones?
I think identifying somebody that is not a time waster is a good one to start with. So if they make sure that they go through the necessary questions and interactions that you've got to have before sending happens, but they do so in a succinct way, and it's like, okay, cool, that's done, we've gone through things, but it's not, they're not milking the conversation for all they can to just get interaction with you, because that is definitely something that I notice is someone will say, I'll cover it, I'll pay, and then they'll 18 messages later and they're still just asking the same question reworded in 4 different ways.
Yep.
And I'm like, you're not gonna
Yes.
send this money, are you?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
So first of all, if they clearly have a knowledge, and whether it's experience or whether it is just using their brain a little bit, they know how to go about that sort of conversation and transition into the actual dynamic or the actual sending. And when they do send it, if they are open with communication, if they have open communication in where they're at and they don't try and, maybe the opposite problem could be that they try and rush through everything. There's definitely a middle ground to be found there. And if they sit comfortably in that middle ground, they are respectful, they are, swift with it, but not too swift. And they know that they don't sort of dismiss aftercare and checking in with them afterwards as yeah, okay, it's done.
Yep.
Yeah,
They
I got
are
my
kind of
fix.
I'm good. Yeah, thank you for checking
Yeah.
in, and I'll speak to
Yeah.
you soon. I hope we
That's
can do this again
thank you.
sometime. As opposed to I sent, bye. Which,
Yes.
that's the thing. I'm like, okay, cool, it's not the breaking of a nation. I'm not going to go and cry about it, but I am just kind of like, okay, well, that wasn't really a very, there wasn't chemistry there. There wasn't any kind of, it didn't feel like a dynamic so much as a once-off.
It is just sexy across whether it's BDSM or any other relations, vanilla, otherwise in between, outside of that we haven't thought of. For anyone to approach any interaction first with their big brain, not with your
Yep.
small brain, whether you,
Yep.
whatever
Yes.
gender you are,
Yeah.
and to actually foster an understanding connection first, because that allows the actual erotic aspect of it to have depth and deepen.
Yes. Yes.
And
I think as well as
so
someone,
it's just sexy.
Yeah.
It's just
Exactly.
the start of sexy intellectual stimulation
Yes.
foreplay.
Yeah. Thank you, Gemma.
Yeah, I think someone coming to you very obviously already in not even necessarily subspace, but a submissive mindset. Whenever they come to you already kind of as if you're already in a dynamic, it can be a little okay, well, we need to go through some stuff first. Whereas when they come at things I'm a person, you're a person, there's obviously a dynamic that we both want to foster here, but I'm not going to approach you as if I'm already your submissive and you owe me dominance. The same way that you have a big issue with a lot of doms assuming that just because I'm the dom, you're the sub, that means you have to submit to me. There is also a fair thing of the other way around. Yeah. So I think when someone comes at it as just we're two people trying to foster a dynamic, not I'm a sub and that's my entire identity and I expect you to hold space for that. Yeah,
Yes.
that's very sexy.
Yeah. Well, you have to
Yes.
be chosen both ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also,
exactly.
I personally don't call someone on either side of the slash a real dom or a real sub if they assume they're submissive and they assume
Yeah.
everyone should dominate me because I'm submissive or I'm so eager and desperate. And for me, I'm like, well, you're not really submissive because you're self-serving in this case, because I'm telling you exactly what I need and what I want for a submissive. And if you truly want to serve, and, show that you want to worship me, then you're going to go at my pace, and you're also going to be trying to find ways to please me and actually listen.
Yeah, as opposed to just, I have this fantasy, and because you're a dom, I expect you to fulfill it, kind of thing.
And I think it's
Yeah.
so easy with online because people want that quick fix, right? It's like we get that instant gratification when we put something in the search bar, when we look at porn sites, like we just type it in and then we try to get it off.
Yeah.
But that leads into, I think, what you wanted to ask about the rise of online and social media.
Yeah.
Yes, because it is such an interesting play on it. I haven't, while recording, I am not on the internet yet, so I will be navigating that. And Gemma does a lot of it in person. So your perspective is really interesting to us. So with the rise of social media and with COVID lockdowns, FinDom has gained visibility, but also criticism. Have you noticed any cultural, social, or generational patterns in those drawn to FinDom?
Generational, no, not really. I have people that are interested in FinDom anywhere from the age of like late teens, like 18, 19, all the way up to like in their 60s and 70s and know how to use the internet. So there really isn't. I think it is because that sociological, like, men's power lays in their money is so, like, sure, it was, I think, possibly more prevalent for older men, but it's still very present for younger men, and I think becoming
So that
increasingly
hasn't
present
shifted society.
in the social political climate we're in. So I think that's pretty broadly applicable. As for before, like, the pandemic and everything went more online, I actually started in January or February of 2020. I started this work just before the pandemic hit.
Wow. And so I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh, you started because of the pandemic. Because I think there was a whole blow up because women were like, well, I'm at home, I need to go online, or OnlyFans was booming, and it's like, well, let's try this out. So there was just like a plethora of women entering the space, or so I think that was the case.
I think there was. I think because...
Do you see any difference between, say, any DOMs that were doing it before the pandemic and like the newer or younger FinDoms that, I don't know, like, I'm still learning about this, like whether they're doing it actually ethically or not? Like, are there some delineations that you're seeing
I think
in the
possibly...
approach, or even like their verbiage or how they represent FinDom?
I think people that did it before the pandemic, I don't know if it's specifically because of the pandemic or more just they have more experience and it wasn't as publicized when they got into it. So if they were going to find out about it, period, like, they had to go about it the right way. But people that were more active before the pandemic, I find, are more likely to be better educated on it and how to practice it ethically, whereas there was that big boom. Everyone was at home, everyone was on Twitter, everyone was seeing OnlyFans link popping up on their TL, so a lot of more people, I think, got into it over the pandemic, and not all of them had either, like, good ethical interest in it, or knowledge, and I think a lot of people just kind of wanted to try it out, thought it was easy money, and then realized that even if you aren't doing it ethically, it takes a lot of time. And they were kind of tourists in the industry. They kind of were like, hey, I heard about this thing. It's supposed to earn you loads of money really quickly, and like, all you have to do is be a bitch. And they tried it, it failed, and then they were like, never mind, actually, I don't like this, and left. There's still residual impact where people see those people and think the same way. It's just not quite as oomph at the moment as it was during the pandemic.
Do you think there's been a kind of a clearing of those DOMs as of recent, or do you still think it's growing and there's still those that think that it's easy money and they don't actually understand the actual philosophy of BDSM and power dynamics?
I think there are still a lot of them, just objectively speaking. Like, when you're scrolling through it, it's still very important to check that they are not one of those people. I think it is at that level of prevalence, but I don't think it's quite as pervasive as it was during the pandemic. I think that was far more... it was very much a wave of like, well, I'm at home and I've been laid off or I'm on furlough, like I need some way to earn money. And they just didn't do the due research.
Do you consider someone who is solely into FinDom or has only done it online and not practiced anything in person, kink-wise, or any other kinks? Would you consider that like legitimately a dom?
As long as they know about the essentials of how to practice safe kink and things like that. And I think it's important not just to know about how to practice safe kink online, but also in person. Even if they aren't really, if their interest isn't really taken by anything else, if their interest is solely taken by FinDom, especially for the kink that it is, rather than just as like a way to earn money. Because I think, yes, obviously it's FinDom. It's going to earn you money, but there is so much more to it than that. So I think as long as they are genuinely interested in how to practice it safely, they educate themselves, and that does require knowing a lot of how other kinks and fetishes will work too, then yes, I would say.
Yeah.
Is FinDoming the way, because I know that you are completely online, you did take time to educate yourself and be safe and be knowledgeable. Did you go into the industry as a whole through FinDoming or just internet doming as a whole?
I got into the industry as a sub. I started
Personally,
out when
right?
I was
Personally, not
yeah,
professionally.
like I
Yeah.
I started out as when I was 18. I started posting my nudes on Twitter because it was fun and just as a way of like, I'm an exhibitionist. I wanted to post my nudes. So I started out doing that, and I spent about maybe 9, 10 months deciding through that time whether I wanted to start earning money from it or not, or whether I thought that would rip the fun out of something that I really genuinely enjoyed. Like, was that something that I thought I could sustain if I did put financial pressure behind it? Even though I only wanted to start out as like, oh, I'll just earn some money for some lingerie on the side. I'll just sell the odd photo set, whatever. Um, like I wasn't planning on making it a full-time job at all, but it was still, I thought, I was working full-time in retail at the time, and I thought if I do rely on it at all for money, is that going to rip the fun out of it? And I decided it wouldn't. So I started out continuing as a sub, and it was when someone commented on my TikTok back in 2021, I think, saying, "Can you whisper good boy?" And I just
saw
got
that one.
I just got my phone out in front of my mirror in my bedroom and was just like, I never thought I'd get one of these comments, but sure. And I whispered it, and I'm not even gonna lie to you, the way I whispered it kind of sounds like I'm taking my dying breath, which does amuse me a little bit. But that actually ended up generating extra engagement because people were like, why is she wheezing like that? People, like, it was very polarizing, that video. That's why I think it did so well. But a lot of people really enjoyed it and were complimenting my voice. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's the best, like, that video did the best out of anything I had ever posted. And people wanted, there was a demand for more dom-leaning content. And I was like, well, you know, it's been something that I'm curious about for a long, long time. I just didn't think, like, I'd always been told how adorable I was and how cutesy I was, and I thought, I could never. Like, I could never pull that off. That just wouldn't be marketable for me. I decided to try it out, and it did pretty well for me, and that was how I got into online doming. Yeah, I just sort of, I very much, like, tepidly was like, I'm just
Can I
dip my toe in. But I ended up really enjoying it, and I definitely took my time getting into various areas. Like, I had a lot of people who were interested in playing with certain kinks and certain dynamics before I was ready for it. But one of the things that even when I first started posting on Twitter, I was very, like, solid on with myself was, do not overstep your boundaries, it will not go well. Like, before I even begin to play with something, I need to establish how I feel about it, how comfortable I am engaging with that or playing with that, and where my limits lie with it. So everything that I did engage with, I took a lot of time to consider, and I still do.
Yeah, baby doms, please take notes because that's a beautiful way to approach your art form, and it's very respectable. So thank you for sharing, because I think that this perspective and not just perspective, but your story and your approach is very responsible, very ethical, and it's why one of the many reasons why Gemma and I were really wanting you to come on, because this needs to be shared.
Yeah. And also just your approach is so playful and engaging, which I think is really refreshing from the traditional idea of a dom.
Yes.
And for us, we really want to, peel back the veil and be like, hey, there are so many ways. There's infinite ways to express this. You don't have to be as intimidated if you're curious about it. There's something out there for everyone.
Yes.
And it's just finding and doing your research. Be a good kinkster.
Yes.
And be deliberate in your approach. Is there a difference in ethically approaching in person versus online? I mean, obviously, there's so much that overlaps, right? With the initial consent negotiation and the basics. We do have an episode called BDSM 101. So if you're curious about that, viewers, definitely go check that. But do you see any differences between how to approach in person versus online?
I mean, there are definitely differences in terms of the knowledge that you need to have, simply because of in person, I think whether it's FinDom or other kinks, there are going to be differences in how it's done, whether that's physical and locational personal safety, or whether it's like making sure that you keep your private information private. So there are differences in how to keep yourself safe and how to keep your, like, the person you're playing with safe, or your play partner safe in person versus online. I think, yeah, there's also, because obviously in person, if you're playing with, like, for example, impact play, you need to know how to, like, dress a wound afterwards if that is something that needs to happen, and, all of that sort of side of the physical aftercare, whereas online, I can't be there to give that, so that's not really a field of knowledge that applies so much there. I think it's still very important to have, but I don't think it's not something that I can physically be there to carry out. And I think it's similar with FinDom. Like, if you do a cash meet in person, you need to know how to make sure that you're not followed home. You need to know how to make sure that, they don't have anything that they could potentially use to hurt you, and vice versa. Both people need to be sure of this both ways around.
I'll take photos of my submissive during a session, unless that's like a huge limit, right? But even if it's CNC and I know it's an edge, then I'll take a photo, and I won't take a photo of their face. But if it really, I know it's like really sensitive topic, I will show them after that I'm deleting it, and I'm deleting it from my deleted files, and I will show them. I'll be like, hey, this is the aftercare. You did so great going through that, and I know that was like an edge. And you freaked out, but you really liked it.
Yeah.
But guess what? We're clear. Or it's like giving them some instructions after of like, this is what I want and need you to do to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Like, if there's wounds, be like, you need to redress it. Like, you need to do this, X, Y, Z. And I sense that with online, because I did online a little bit. And for me, it's just way harder. I'm a very tactile person and a very visual person. So having the person or subject in front of me is what I really feed off of.
Yeah.
But I sense that with online, the person needs to have a bit more self-responsibility, because you're not there to actually physically see the aftermath. You are just trusting whatever they're telling you.
Yeah. And sometimes they don't want to send photos either. So you have
you don't
to
even know
really
who.
trust, because if someone is comfortable sending photos, whenever I do sexting sessions, I will say, like, if you are comfortable sending photos, then you are welcome to, but there is no obligation to. But if they are not comfortable sending photos, then there are certain things that I will steer clear from, because I can't guarantee that they will do the due care afterwards that they need to, that I am not there to administer. Which is why I don't play with, like, impact in online sessions, really. I don't, like, it might be the odd, like, hey, spank your butt once. But, like, it's not gonna be, like, which in fairness, there's not. Actually, no, CBT. I don't do CBT online simply because I'm not there to administer the aftercare. but I know there are people that do, but they do like video calls for it, and that's not something that I offer. So I think with the things that I do offer, that's just not something that I have the ability to ensure is done correctly and safely. You do just have to trust that they are doing the right thing. So before I do have a session with somebody, I do have I have a half-hour conversation with them beforehand to make sure that I can trust that they're going to be not only safe for me to play with, but safe for themselves. And I might send them some resources or give them some tips and say, whenever you have learned a little bit more or gone through this, like, it's like setting them homework, setting them a task to read through some stuff and come back to me and recite it and rewrite it in their own words so I know that they understood it, which I do the same with my safe words before every session. I have like a post on my OnlyFans that are like, these are the safe words that I use with my submissives and in my sessions. And part of the thing when they book a session is retype that out to me in your own words so I know that you have understood it properly.
Yeah. You're going to get quizzed. And if you could reshape public's perception about financial domination, whether they're wanting to be participants or bystanders, is there anything you would like to share with the public?
That it's not the boogeyman. That it is, when done safely and ethically and with informed participants, it can be a very fun, very erotic style of play, just like any other form of BDSM and kink. But again, just like any other form of BDSM and kink, you do have to be cautious with who you play with. But it's not every FinDom is some like conniving evil bitch who wants to just take men's money, and not every FinSub is some like lonely dude in his mum's basement, because that's not the case at all. There are a lot of varied people on both sides.
Find the mutual eroticism in it, because it is very hot and erotic. Absolutely.
It is. Yeah.
It's a very taboo subject, even though it's so blatantly everything in society.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, it is such a blatant reflection of society and social ideals. But I think that is part of what makes it so taboo, is people are like, but that's taking it outside of, oh no, you sexualized it. And it's like, everything is sexualized.
Yeah, we're all thinking it if we're not saying it out loud. Well, thank you so much, Goddess Seraphina with an I. Where can our viewers and listeners find you?
Seraphina Cox on Linktree. I don't know what the specific link is. If I just head,
We will link it down below.
Yes, we'll link it down
Yeah?
below.
Yes.
My Linktree has my Blue Sky, my Instagram, my TikToks. It still has my ex on it, but I'm hoping to move away from that eventually. So yeah, and obviously it has my OnlyFans and my Benefits. So
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
We deeply appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you both too.
Did you enjoy being domed? Like, subscribe, and add your worships in the comments. Follow us on all socials linked in the bio below.